technical issues on our side, so we can hear you. The image will probably cut in and out randomly on our end, and you should be able to share your screen at the point you have any information that you want to share and put on the screen. So it's working, and we're going to cross our fingers. And
Council, they have draft copies as well, correct?
we did not print them off because it was so many copies of hard copy. I have a digital copy, and I can put it on the screen if you need me to.
Okay, let me get a screen share on here, and that should work.
It is 5:30, and I call the special city council meeting of the City of Commerce, May 2nd, 5:30 in the evening, to order. So the first item we have on the agenda, I'm going to move some things around since we have our auditing firm on the phone with us. And let's immediately jump down to item number 5, which is presentation, discussion, and possible action on a resolution accepting the financial audit for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022. Ms. Campbell.
Tommy, we can see your screen, but you might want to zoom it in a little bit so that they can read the numbers. Mayor, Council, you are going to have to turn around and face the screen behind you because
It's on there.
it's on theirs, it's not on these.
Make sure you turn them on.
Is that better like that?
Yes.
Everybody see that okay? So, if you can see the screen, let me just make a few comments before I kind of get started on some of the numbers. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly so it won't get too tedious, but feel free to stop me and ask any questions along that you might have. The news I'm going to give you is all really good. You're going to, as you know, the economy is really strong in Texas right now, really a lot of places. And it shows up in your financial statements.
with the community, but it's basically a report card on management of this organization and how we're handling both the monetary resources and the physical assets. And so as we've discussed before, there's been a number of years where commerce was not trending positively, either on the money side or on the physical side of the assets. But over the past number of years, and it started before I got here, we're just continuing on that trend. We feel like the report card's showing that things are improving, but we continue to strive to be transparent as much as we possibly can. It's unfortunate that we didn't have the hard copy audit document to put in your hands in advance, and so we do want you to have some time to review the document, look through the information that's provided into it. And so the staff's recommendation, ask any questions that may come to you based on what you've seen tonight, but we're going to recommend that we table approval of the audit so that you've got a couple of weeks to actually review the information, and then our regular meeting on the 16th, we'll put this back on for a formal adoption and approval of the report. But if you have any questions of the auditor, now's the time that we've got them on the phone, but we're recommending that you wait on actual taking action to approve the audit until you've had time to review the documents.
Are there any questions for Mr. Nelson? Or Ms. Campbell? Or Mr. Lisenby?
Yeah, let me say this, if something does come up in the interim, I'm happy to come back. You know, if you'd like me to come back and ask any particular questions later, I'm happy to do that if you'd like for that to happen.
Tommy, I think we would want you to be available on May the 16th. Hopefully we can schedule that so that you're here in person. Our technology is an obstacle tonight.
Okay.
And so we'll talk offline about that meeting.
Okay.
Okay, council has heard.
Congratulations on a very successful year, and best wishes. You know, you got, the one thing that happens when you start to see a lot of growth like this is it doesn't make the job any easier. You know, a lot of things to consider and a lot of important decisions to make, so best wishes to you as you follow that path.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Council's heard the recommendation from Mr. Lisenby.
I move that we table this item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson, for your time tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Tommy, thank you for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you.
Maybe if you'll indulge me, give me just a few minutes to swap the technology over. We'll get these screens working better than they are right now. So just give us a few minutes.
No problem. discussion and possible action on a resolution awarding a construction contract for the Sulphur River Crossing Utility Line Project. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor, Council, if you'll recall, last year, I believe it was during the spring, the treated water line that comes into town from our water treatment plant at the crossing at the Sulphur River experienced a minor water leak. And as we went to try to identify and repair that water leak, we found that all of the river crossing was encased in concrete. And the first, what was a minor leak that we found, was right at the area where the pipe comes out of the concrete encasement. And so staff attempted and successfully fixed that leak. And then shortly after that, another more major leak appeared, and it was somewhere deeper down inside that concrete encasement. And so we evaluated. We had Mr. Mike Tibbetts come and take a look at it with us. And we were fearful that if we tried to break the concrete off the line to find the leak and fix it, we would actually rupture and destroy the line and have no viable way to deliver water to the community. And so we felt like there was not a safe and effective way to stop that leak other than to install an entirely new river crossing. And so Mike and some of the connections that he had brought a team together of highly qualified professionals to look at this issue and begin to investigate exactly what were the steps necessary to fix this leak. And so what we have in front of you tonight is a significant amount of work on Mike and his team's part and the professionals that he's brought to the table to effect a repair. And so what we have is a proposal for that work. My documents are in the wrong order. In situ form is, they're international, aren't they? Y'all do work all over the world. Highly respected.
Heidi, do we have a copy of that?
It was in the packet. We can make copies
I
of
didn't get
this.
anything.
Okay.
No, we don't have computers because we didn't have anything.
Yeah. And so the pricing that we've acquired is through Byboard, which is a state purchasing cooperative. So the city is getting state purchasing pricing for this work. And so initially when we started the conversations and when we brought it to you, we felt like we would be able to just bore and replace the line as it goes underneath the river crossing. But as we've investigated this and talked with the professionals that do this more than my staff and I do, it was a little bit more complicated than what we had anticipated. And so with the additional engineering and additional work that is required, we have a pricing for the project of $964,665. Jamie, can you go make some copies of that document, and so I can talk you through some of what we're looking at. So as we briefed you a couple of weeks ago, we were anticipating somewhere around $500,000 as the cost for this repair, and that was going to be just basically the boring underneath the river. There's some additional line work and valving and stuff that has to happen to make this be effective as a repair. And so that has added to the scope of work and thus added to the cost. And so Jamie and I and some of the staff have looked at how do we fund this repair. As the auditor clearly presented, the position of our utility fund is much stronger than it's been in the past. And we, in theory, could absorb $1 million hit and keep operating, but that puts us right back into some pretty precarious financial situation, and we're not comfortable taking that hit in the form of cash. And so included in the capital improvements program that you've already adopted for this current fiscal year, the utility is already raising $3.5 million in funding from certificates of obligation. That process is ongoing. We look to have that cash in hand, I believe, in June. And so within that 3.5 million, we had $1 million project on that list that we're now proposing to punt to next year, so that we can take the cash that was going to be used for the project that's within the plan, and that is the Pritchard Road utility extensions. There's a housing development that is planned to take place, 60 homes up on Pritchard Road, that's going to require some water line extensions to support it. And we had planned to participate in that project to upsize the lines. Until recently, that project's been kind of dormant and not a lot of action was moving on it. And so making sure we can supply water to the entire town is a little more important than making sure we can supply water to a 60-home subdivision. And so we're working with the developer to see what their timing is. They haven't completed design of their project, so we feel safe in saying that that project won't happen until next year, and we can push their funding to next year's capital program, and these funds will be used to cash flow the project that is in front of you today. So staff is recommending approval of the contract, so we can lock in the contract, lock in the pricing, and they can order materials, because some of these materials have lead time. And we also believe that we can confidently finance this project without negatively impacting the cash position of our university. And so with that, Mike, I want to invite you and, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, Tim, to come discuss the project and answer any questions that you may have, and we'll have the hard copies for you quickly.
Not if you're using state,
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
if you're using
I don't want to
state funds.
say anything that Howdy's already told you. I know your time is precious, so I'll try to hit the high points, and if I don't hit enough points, let me know. If I'm hitting too many points, let me know. As Howdy mentioned, there's a 14-inch water line that goes across the river. It goes from the water treatment plant into town, and it's the only artery to take water from the water plant to town. You have a well field east of town that puts some water into town, but it's not near enough to supply town. And the engineer that designed that line never intended to work on it himself, or he never would have built it like that. They put the line through the creek, through the river, and then encased it in concrete to keep erosion from washing it out, but it made it very difficult. We would have preferred that they had put it in a casing so it could have been slipped out and we could have worked on it and slide it back in. But that's in the past. So, and what Howdy talked about when we originally were looking at this project, it was going to be just a line crossing the river, but it was also going to be a 14-inch line. However, Howdy is very far-sighted. He's looking to the future, and we need to plan for the future, and so this line is going to be an 18-inch line crossing the river instead of a 14. So that will give you additional capacity, and it'll be put in now instead of putting it in later. It has to be done anyway. So we've got an 18-inch line here instead of a 14. Now, if there happened to be some problem with that, we could still run a 14-inch line inside of that line and put you back just like you are now. But the 18 will give you more capacity. It'll put you in a better position for the future. Now, it is also going to be installed, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be like 20 to 25 feet below the river. And we won't be worried about any erosion at that point, and it will be made of, the pipe will be rated for 235 PSI, and the existing system is running at about 90, so it has very large safety factor to it. We've also got it stubbed out so that in the future, when y'all get ready to replace the remainder of the 14-inch line, you can put an 18 on it. There'll be valves on it so it can be isolated to be worked on. And let's see, I can kind of hit more points or less if you want to, but Buy Board is considered to be a competitive bid based on state requirements. And we went through Buy Board because we wanted to save as much time as possible. We could have put this thing out for bids, but it would have taken another 3 months, and frankly, I don't think we've got the time when we looked at this last summer, there was a leak, but now it's getting worse. I don't know how much more time that we have. And if we rebid the project, there's no guarantee that we'd get any bids or better bids. And so my recommendation is that they award the project in situ form, and their bonding company is willing to issue a bond, payment performance bond, to guarantee that they finish the project. And you probably got questions of Tim about when can you get started and how long will it take. So I'll try to turn that over to him if you don't have any questions for me.
Okay, you were saying about the other 14 inches or wherever the 18 we could put in later. What area are you talking about?
I've got a drawing here if it'd be easier, but in order to go 20 feet under the river, the line has to start out going like 10 horizontal to 1 vertical. So we have to go 400 feet back from the center of the river to start going in and coming back out. The line can't, it's like 21 inches outside diameter, and the walls are about that thick. So you don't turn that on a dime. It has to be gradual. So we had to come out 400, 450 feet on each side of the river. Well, the new line, if the river's right here, we're under right here, the new line comes like that. We're coming out of the ground way out here, so we have to go back and tie in right here, and then we have to come up and tie over here. The remainder is still the existing 14-inch line. We're going to abandon it in between there. So in the future, we'll have pipe out there that's 18 that you can tie onto going to town. You can tie on going back to the water plant.
Okay.
This will give you the ability to pump through an 18-inch line, and in the future, that won't have to be taken care of. And it'll be put in at today's prices instead of 5 or 10 years from now, whenever y'all get ready to do it. Talk time and
I'm Tim Petrie. I'm the business development manager for InSituForm Technologies and Ainton Corporation. I've been working with cities just like yourself for about 20, 40 years, right here in North Texas, dealing with all sorts of trenchless pipeline rehabilitation and replacement projects. So whatever questions you have for me, a couple of things that haven't been mentioned is throughout the evaluation of the project and what could and couldn't be done with this crossing, we did consider several other options. In situ main, which is a pressure cured in place pipe option, we couldn't use that because of the 45-degree bends from the initial installation. There were several items that made that initial installation difficult to work on and to maintain in the future, and this 45-degree bend was one. Right, yeah. So that option, we have a Kevlar line, class 3 pipeline option that's fairly new in the U.S. that is a German product that we also looked at. That is not a class 4 structurally sound pipe. It would just be structurally sound for the internal pressure and not external. So for a long-term repair option, that fell by the wayside as well. And then a high-density polyethylene liner that we use in oil and gas pipeline transmission lanes, that would have been too thick and would have reduced your capacity, and also the 45s had an issue with that as well. So there were several options that we looked at. This ended up being really the only viable option outside of an open cut replacement for the creek crossing that's real practical. But we did work with Hayter, and we came up, we have our own design engineers that can do bore profiles, and so we suggested bore profiles and the depth that needed to be and where the ends would be, and I think with this option, you're actually getting more of the pipe section of pipe, the tie-ins, you'll have valves that you can, that would be useful in the future, and then, you know, if growth, obviously growth is probably anticipated, then yeah, it's, easy to tie into that pipe in the future. Timeframes, if you're interested in that, we feel like we could probably get started within 2 to 4 weeks. I can't sit here with 100% confidence and tell you tonight what the lead times would be on all the materials until I actually get the order placed. But we feel very comfortable. One of our divisions, Underground Solutions, produces the fusible PVC pipe that would be used on this project. So that is actually in production right now. We figured, since we were already running an 18-inch at this DR thickness, that we would just go ahead and run the footage required for this project. I did check that right before the meeting. That is being ran right now, so we'll have that available. If it's not used for this project, doesn't get approved, we'll use it for something else. But we knew the severity of the issue, so we're running that. The fittings, we believe, will be the longest lead time, probably around 6 weeks or so, maybe 8 weeks. If we started the project within 2 to 4 weeks, and we would have an estimated time frame of about 8 weeks, we would be doing clearing and identifying the locations of the ends and doing the reroutes or replacement of the sections that have to be open cut replaced while we're waiting on those fittings. So hopefully by the time those fittings arrive, we'll have it timed out to where those fittings come in and basically we do our tie-ins to the existing pipe on each end, and everything should be fairly fluid and fall into what our expected time frame of about 6 to 8 weeks for the project completion.
How much is the downtime whenever we start cutting over from one pipe to the next?
That is probably gonna just be a matter of a day or two. I don't know specifically what that time frame would be because we haven't identified where the actual connections will be made. But typically that's gonna be about a day or two, a day for each end.
Is that any special requirement on us?
To notify?
If we start this project with all of our tanks,
Let me turn my mic on. We can survive a day. A day and a half is going to make us really, really nervous. 2 full days, we probably don't have the water and storage to survive 2 full days. And so we're going to have to look at some of the sequencing. And so if we have both ends ready, if we can be working on both ends at the same time, but we've got to kill the line, we've got to probably drain the line. There's some work that's got to be involved. There's no doubt about it.
And we would be in the middle of peak watering
That's what,
season.
at peak
Oh,
water season.
we'll be late July, early August, which is peak water demand season, and trying to survive for a day or two with what we've got in storage. It's going to be a concern, but there's no way around it.
We have all of our personnel
No.
thrown at it for sure. That's the critical time frame, obviously. So all of our resources will be dedicated to that during the switch over.
Could we utilize our well water to fill in the gap?
We get about 25% of our water from the wells, and 75% comes through this pipeline. And so if all the wells were running at peak efficiency, that would not be enough to keep us out of trouble. However, that being said, one of our primary wells is well number 2, and it's down right now, and we're replacing all the motors and pumps in that one. That'll be back up and running next week. $20,000, piece of cake. But one of our wells is down right now, but it'll be back up and running within a week.
So what kind of contingency would we need to be making to the community, so in case we're down?
We will most
few
likely
days.
go, because of the time of year, we're most likely going to go ahead and go into some kind of form of water restrictions, water rationing. We'll probably implement some emergency procedures to have bottled water and water resources available.
Okay.
We'll have all of that staged and ready to go, and then make sure we've got domestic water needs provided for the community as best we can.
Okay, and we talked about it at one point, that we probably needed to have easements because of where we thought we were gonna have to bore,
Easements have been acquired.
so it's been done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good deal.
One thing I'd like to point out, and this is how he's created, the new line will be installed, we don't not only have easements where we haven't been before, we're putting in easements parallel to the old line, because part of it, the old line now is on TxDOT right of way, and there's already fiber optic and power lines and other things that are in our way. And he's getting us a 25-foot easement that's ours. And we're gonna be, and Tim will be able to work in, won't have to be messing with fiber optic and gas and other things that are out there. This will be y'all's for the future, that you tie onto that. And, we took that easement, we didn't only stop it where the work is stopping, we went all the way up to the north property line on that particular property. So you'll be able to tie onto that in the future. So there's been some forward planning on this that will benefit future generations.
Those other utilities were a big concern for us early on, so that
Yeah.
easement was a big plus for us when we considered construction.
Any other questions?
Just as I think we've seen the pictures before, and I'm not going to claim to know how to judge 400 feet on each side of the river. But this is the river crossing. The leak currently happens, if you're looking at your screen, about where the arrow is. That's where the leak is today. And our line goes down TxDOT right of way on both sides of the river. But when we come up on the south side of the river, we pretty quickly move over into what I believe is Newkirk property, and then head back off towards the water treatment plant. Because of the requirements of the angles for the bore, we've got to start 400 feet on one side. We're going to come up 400 feet on the other side, and where we come up, our existing line is not there for the connection. And so we'll then cut across country to the existing line and reconnect. So south of the river is going to look like an inverted L, and come back over and reconnect. And so some of that work was not anticipated when we first started this. But this route, as Mike indicated, gives us all the capacity and the needs we have for future water demands and needs. Knock on wood, we shouldn't have to touch this river crossing again in a couple of decades, maybe a couple of generations if we're lucky. Knock on wood. Now that I've said that, I've just doomed us all. But that's just kind of how it works. So while the price is more than we were hoping, to be perfectly honest, we really don't have any options. And so we've found a way to finance it, and we have a contractor ready, willing, and able to execute this project. And so staff is recommending approval of the proposal so that we can execute the contracts and get these guys working.
All right. Are there any other questions? Not? Do I have a motion?
I move that we award the construction contract for the Sulphur River Crossing Utility Line Project.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Start moving.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very much appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, we're anticipating, I'll provide an update to, David tomorrow on time, expecting delivery times and all that.
Perfect.
We're anxiously waiting.
Mike, again, thank you for all of your help on this.
Always is with Commerce.
Take care of your tractor.
All right, thank you, council. Item number 3, discussion and possible action on the approval of a task authorization number 4 with Friesen Nichols related to development of a street maintenance program. Mr. Lisenby.
Mayor, Council, in the hard copies you were just provided that are stapled together, the first 2 pages are for the river crossing. The second 2 pages are for the Friesen Nichols street maintenance plan. When we brought the council the concept of street maintenance fee, and we're looking at the beginning year generating approximately $250,000 of revenue, one of the things that we committed to the community and to the council is the development of a street maintenance program in which we identify what they say here is the right mix of fixes. Street maintenance is different than street reconstruction, and there's an industry accepted list of maintenance activities that are proven to extend the life and improve the condition of existing streets. And I would submit humbly and reluctantly that as we are currently staffed and equipped, we don't have the equipment necessary to do most of what would be considered effective maintenance activities. And so we need to identify what are those maintenance activities that our staff is going to perform, and what equipment do we need to perform that work, and what is the maintenance activity that we're going to contract out. Some of the maintenance activity requires some expensive pieces of equipment and some specialized knowledge on how to operate that equipment, and you don't use it year-round. And so I'm honestly going to have a hard time recommending that we invest money in equipment that's not used year-round and obtaining training for staff that's not going to be used year-round. And so some of that more complex work, we're probably going to bring contractors in. And so we want to develop a toolbox of what are the maintenance activities that we're going to perform, and what equipment do we need, and what are the maintenance activities that we're going to contract out, and go ahead and get a set of specifications that can be used for those future projects. The second half of this street maintenance plan is then to take a look at the street inventory that was done, was that 2017, 18, with the paver software? 18. We have a very extensive inventory and data on the condition of our streets. And so the consultants with Friesen Nichols are going to review that data, and we're going to start putting a plan of what streets are we going to start maintenance on, so that we can start identifying what the projects are going to be, where the projects are going to be located, and kind of have a sequencing of how we want to tackle those over the coming years. So that once this plan is developed, we know what work we're going to do and what equipment we need. We're going to know what work we're going to contract out, and we're going to have a set of specifications, and we're going to project out into the future a list of project locations and scopes so that we can start planning and delivering effective street maintenance to the community. And this is a plan that will help us have the right tools to make that happen. The consultant with Friesen Nichols that is going to be helping us retired from the city of Dallas, leading their street maintenance program. So he's got some experience doing street maintenance. And so the scope of work that is identified in the document that you have, they're proposing a price of $49,874. And so this is technically under the $50,000 threshold. Staff could authorize this. But it's a very important project. It's high profile. We've made a commitment to the community to do this. And so we're bringing it to council for review, discussion, and approval. Staff is recommending awarding task authorization number 4 to Friesen Nichols so that we can develop the street maintenance plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Mr. Lisenby?
And where we're getting the funding for this?
Street maintenance funding that's coming from the street maintenance fee.
All right, so the street maintenance fees, all right, so this is going to come out of that? To how we're going to fund it?
Yes.
And how much do we have in that fund now?
We don't have 49
We
yet.
can't have that much.
No, we don't have that much yet.
So we're going to
but
be moving money?
we've got
over?
some money dedicated to streets. That is some dedicated funding.
Okay.
And so we'll use that, but by the end of the year, we'll have this covered.
In the general fund, we have some restricted
get
Get off
kickstarted.
his feet. Okay. And on the amount that we're gathering now, we're collecting monthly, do you know how much we're collecting monthly? Approximately,
We can get that information for you.
okay. So, it's kind of to see where we would be at the end of the fiscal year, 24, not 23, but.
When did we start that? When did we start that fee?
November?
November, I think.
November will be a full year, so in November, we should be close to that 250.
Yes.
When's that restricted fund put in place? The $100K that we have in that restricted fund?
Our restricted fund balance has been there for at least 10 years. And so what happens is when we have small little purchases, we can use some of those funds because they're only in restricted range. And so, I think right now what's left in there is about 100,000. And so, it's in fund balance, but it's restricted.
Right.
What we used last year was, we were doing the traffic counts, and we were trying to figure out what streets we were going to, reconstruct, and we were using some of those funds because if you think about it, a traffic count and those types of things, that really weren't going to move into the original budget in that same thing. So that's why sometimes it's good to have some of those restricted funds. Originally it was only 175,000, so
According to the draft ACFR, it is $93,231 that we have left in that restricted account. We haven't used any this year.
So according to this contract, we're looking at possibly having this ready before the end of, if we started now, and considering there's no delays, we'd be finished it by the end of this fiscal year,
Yes.
so we could have this in our budget for next year, of knowing what we're gonna be.
Friesen Nichols
Working on it?
expects the project to be completed within 4 months after notice to proceed.
So that's what I'm saying, it's about
It'd be last minute to the budget.
the last minute, it would be after that, because we have to vote on it when, in August? Or, no, not until September, but,
as of March, we have received $21,000 in street
21,000?
as of the end of March.
So only 21,000 from October to March?
Do
and
the,
we're
do the math on
anticipating
that. How much is that a month?
That's we're not gonna have 250. No way.
Well, we had a major contributor decide not to support the city.
So then we're not gonna get,
The univers,
November,
we actually
December,
didn't
January,
budget
February, March.
income from the university.
That was just March.
That was just 1 month's worth.
I was gonna say, we're only getting
We're up here
4,200?
doing the math. Oh,
I was gonna say, we're not
I was with
getting
Becky. We
in
wasted
trouble.
we wasted a lot of energy selling this.
for nothing.
Thank you.
Is 107,000.
107,000.
Oh, gosh, Tommy's face, I'm sorry, Tommy.
I
21,000,
shall recover.
I was gonna say, wait
I shall
a minute.
recover.
Wow.
Two.
This has been a day. Yeah.
Nobody's paying their bills. Okay, so 107,000. Okay,
As of the end of March.
Well, that sounds really much better. Thank you.
So yes, we can pay for this.
Okay.
He was just bragging on you a second ago.
I'm so sorry.
It's good, though, that she finds it. That's what we know.
I was even looking right at it.
All right. Are there any other questions?
I'm still reading.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem.
The final completion of the project would be 4 months after we've initiated the project, but we'll know before then what work we're going to do and what work contractors are going to do, and if there's any equipment that we need to look at within the budget.
Okay, so in that part of that discussion of coming up with our plans, because it talks about that we have the city broken up into 4 quadrants. All right, so are we looking at doing one in each one, or are we doing it by traffic and the way that it looks and
The concept that we have right now, but we haven't started the plan, is that we'll do projects in each quadrant, and so that we're spreading it around equally around the community, because everybody's paying in, and if we only did projects in one quadrant, that's not going to satisfy the community.
Show everybody a little love.
But where we have our highest traffic is where?
Well, traffic counts is what we're using to select reconstruction.
Reconstruction.
Maintenance, we're going to be looking at the surfaces that are in the worst conditions.
Okay,
And so we'll identify the worst condition streets based on the paver information and start putting a maintenance plan together to try to address the worst condition streets in each quadrant and move around that way. So we won't look at traffic counts as a defining process for street maintenance.
okay. Do you have the same amount of population paying in each one of the quadrants?
Have not done that evaluation yet, and so I don't know the answer. We could, in theory, we could draw different quadrants than the ones that are used now.
I don't know, that's probably up for discussion that we should probably look at. I mean, I feel like, if there's more people in a quadrant and they're paying more money into it, then a particular amount of money should be set aside for that quadrant.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Counts for something.
1/5.
But we've got to develop the plan so that we
Right.
can answer those questions. And so we're requesting approval to develop the plan.
Got it. I'm finished reading.
Council good? Any more questions for Mr. Lisenby? There being no more questions, can I have a motion, please?
I move approval of a task authorization number 4 with Freeze and Nichols related to the development of street maintenance plan.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item number 4, discussion and possible action on a resolution awarding a contract for completion of the City of Commerce Water Master Plan to EHT. Mr. Lisenby.
I think he's got some.
More hard copy documents.
Thank you.
Okay, it's a workshop.
All right, Mayor, Council, as we've briefed during a previous workshop, the City of Commerce has some, I'll try not to use hyperbole, some incredibly important decisions to make regarding where we get our water from, how we treat it, and how we move that water around, not just based on today's condition of this infrastructure, but also considering the growth that we're anticipating happening, not just in Commerce, but within this portion of the county, because we don't just supply water to Commerce, we supply water to several rural water corporations that provide water out in the rural areas. And so we've got to look into the future at what those water demands will be, where we're going to get the water from, how we're going to treat it, how we're moving it around. And so it is the role of a water master plan to consider those issues and develop plans and strategies as you move into the future. So what we put into the current CIP was to start a water master plan, primarily to look at the issues of water supply and water treatment. A full water master plan usually starts from the lake or the well where the raw water starts, all the way through the last faucet of the last house of how they get water, and a master plan looks at the entire system. When we put this project together, we only wanted to look at raw water supply and treatment. And so we went through a request for qualifications, had a number of highly qualified firms submit and compete for that job, and we selected Enprotech Hibbs and Todd, or EHT, as the firm that was the most qualified to perform this work. Once we've made that selection based on qualifications, which is requirement of state law, then we start negotiating what's called a scope and fee document. And this is the document that we have in front of you that outlines the scope of work that EHT is proposing to perform, and then a fee of what it would cost to perform that work. The budget that we had for this project was $250,000. In one of my last communities, we did a full water master plan from the beginning of the life of a drop of water all the way through the last faucet. The cost of that water master plan was about $400,000, and it was a community consistent in size of Commerce. I wasn't intending to do a full water master plan. We wanted to just answer the main questions first, and so we put a budget of $250,000 together. Leading with the headline, the scope of work that EHT has proposed is basically a full water master plan, and their price is $225,000, which came in less than what we had budgeted. So they are proposing more work than we anticipated while still falling within the budget that we had provided. And so I want to talk through some of what this scope of work is. Item number one is basic services, and this is the evaluation of our water system. As we've discussed, we currently get 75% of our raw water from Lake Tawakoni through a contract with the Sabine River Authority, or the SRA, and the price that we pay for that water, rough numbers, we spend about $90,000 to $95,000 a year purchasing water for the use by our community. That contract expires in 2027. So we either have to have a replacement water supply, which we do, I'll get to that, or renegotiate the contract with SRA before 2027. SRA has already been in conversations with us. They're more than willing to renegotiate and extend that water supply contract, because at the point they do, they're going to raise our price of water. We currently pay about 3 cents per thousand, and we will go to 33 cents per thousand. So if we negotiate the contract that exists today with SRA, our annual cost of water will go from $95,000 a year to $950,000 a year. And we don't get to negotiate price with the Sabine River Authority. And so the contract we have has been very advantageous for our community over the life, and the life of that contract's about to expire, and we have no negotiating power to lower that cost of water. The only thing we can do is lower the quantity of water that is within that contract. In rough numbers, when you talk large volumes of water, you measure it in what's called an acre foot. That measurement of water is basically an acre of land flooded with 1 foot of water. It's the equivalent of about 325,000 gallons and some change. So 1 acre foot is 325,000 gallons of water. The contract we have with SRA is to purchase up to 7,500 acre feet of water. In context, on a given year, we use about 1,000 acre feet of water. So we have contractually the rights to water in Tawakoni significantly greater than our demand for water. But that contract is what's called take or pay. So you pay for all 7,500 acre feet, whether you use all 7,500 acre feet or not. And since this contract was negotiated 50-something years ago, and we're paying 3 cents per thousand, that's incredibly cheap for water, and we can afford to reserve all 7,500 acre feet. We don't need to pay the new prices for 7,500 acre feet because we simply can't afford it. So part of what this evaluation is going to be is what is the right volume of water that we would need moving forward, and is that a number that we could afford to negotiate with Sabine River Authority. So for example, if we called it 1,500 acre feet instead of 7,500 acre feet, our cost would be greatly reduced, but that would only be the supply that we use today and wouldn't allow for future growth. So we're going to have the engineering team at EHT involved in helping us do some of that projection of future demands. Now, added to this, on paper, Commerce is water rich. Because of our partnership with the creation of Jim Chapman Lake, or what people call Lake Cooper, the City of Commerce has water rights and access to, I believe, approximately 16,000 acre feet of water a year. Again, we're only using about 1,000 acre feet. So we have access to a significant volume of water out of Lake Cooper that we've never used. The history of that, y'all may be aware, but there's others that are watching that may not know the history. Prior to the creation of Jim Chapman Lake, most of the city's water supplies were groundwater, and the city was outgrowing the capacity of that groundwater supply 50-something years ago. And so the city chose to participate in the creation of Jim Chapman Lake. And so that permitting and construction process was ongoing. It got tied up in lawsuits and litigation, and the creation of the lake became delayed and delayed and delayed. And it was determined that the lake would not actually be built in time to solve the city's water needs. So the city reached out to the Sabine River Authority and Lake Tawakoni and developed what effectively was an emergency water supply contract to get water out of Lake Tawakoni because it was ready and available and Chapman Lake hadn't even been constructed yet. So we got a very favorable contract with SRA with an incredibly favorable water rate because of the emergency situation. And so we put in 26 miles of pipeline, we put in a pump station and a water treatment plant, all to treat Lake Tawakoni water 50 years ago, maybe 70 years ago. I'd have to look at the numbers. At some point after all of the infrastructure was put in to take Tawakoni water, Chapman Lake was constructed and filled and water was available, but the City of Commerce had no infrastructure to go all the way to Cooper Lake. We had all of our infrastructure going to Tawakoni Lake. So we had a contract to supply water from Tawakoni and all the infrastructure to support it, and we had the rights to water out of Cooper with no infrastructure. And so I believe the city made a wise choice at that point in time to contract with the Upper Trinity Regional Water District so that they could access water out of Cooper and use it and pay Commerce for that water. And so Commerce was receiving funding for Cooper water that we weren't using because we rented or leased our water rights to Upper Trinity. We locked in that contract with Upper Trinity for 100 years. And so the thought was at that point in time that we're going to use Tawakoni water from now on because that's where the infrastructure is. And we don't want to go build all new infrastructure to Cooper if we've already got infrastructure to Tawakoni. Fast forward to today, that contract with Sabine River expires in 2027, and we've got some major water decisions to make within the next couple of years. And we need some solid engineering behind whatever those choices are going to be. The contract that we have with Upper Trinity for Cooper water basically states that at some point, if we decide we need to take water out of Cooper, we can. Upper Trinity will arrange to deliver that water to us, but then we have to pay for the water and we have to pay them back for their construction cost in building the lake. So that makes Cooper water significantly more expensive than Tawakoni water. So we're not going to use Cooper water if it's more expensive than Tawakoni water. But as discussed, Tawakoni water is fixing to get significantly more expensive than what we're paying right now. So the question is, well, is Cooper water actually going to be cheaper than Tawakoni water when that time comes? Well, prior to my arrival, I think that was with the previous city manager. Again, I think it was a wise move by the city. Y'all amended the contract with Upper Trinity, provided a significant infusion of cash that the community needed. We still have a big chunk of that cash available for capital projects, and it changed the terms of our access to Cooper water. Upper Trinity is the owner and constructor of Ralph Hall, which is up near Ladonia. And the contract we have with Upper Trinity states that once Ralph Hall is completed and Upper Trinity has begun taking water from Ralph Hall, it changed the terms of our access to Cooper Lake. So after Ralph Hall is up and operational, at that point, Commerce could choose to start taking Cooper water. We would pay for the cost of water, but we don't have to back pay for all of those previous expenses. Now Cooper water is more affordable because they're taking water from Ralph Hall, and it's cheaper for them to take Ralph Hall water than it is for them to take Cooper water. Ralph Hall is projected to be completed and operational in 2026. So in theory, our access to water from Lake Cooper changes in 2026. Our contract with Tawakoni expires in 2027. So sometime between 26 and 27, we have to make a decision, what water source are we going to use for the next 50 years, and how much water do we need out of that source for the next 50 years. And because we don't do anything easy, the final complication is the quality of water in Lake Cooper is less than the quality of water coming out of Tawakoni. The treatment plant that we have is capable of treating Cooper water, but it would require some modifications to our treatment plant. And so if we make this decision to start taking Cooper water, the water may in fact be cheaper than Tawakoni water, but the treatment process may be different. And so we need to know what changes and modifications are required at the water treatment plant to take Cooper water versus taking Tawakoni water. Again, you need a good engineer to make those decisions. And so item number one, the basic water services, is to evaluate what is our future water needs, what is our cost to treat water if it's Tawakoni, what's our cost to treat water if it is Cooper, what's our issues and cost to transport water from Tawakoni versus transporting water from Cooper, and then the actual purchase of the water. So there's a lot of research and study that's got to go into answering those questions, and we have to answer those questions in the next couple of years. Without using any hyperbole, it's incredibly important that we evaluate and answer these questions. Included within the basic services, which is not something we specifically ask for, point 1.5 is an evaluation of our SCADA system. I think we've mentioned before, SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition. It's our remote ability to control our water system. The SCADA system we have, surprisingly or not surprisingly, is highly antiquated and you can't get parts for it anymore. And so at some point we'll have to upgrade our SCADA system. EHT is proposing to do that evaluation for us, included in this scope of work. It's not specifically something we ask for, but they put that in the scope of services that they're proposing, and I'll remind you, still within our budget. So we're getting more work than we asked for at less cost than we anticipated. Moving on, but wait, there's more. A critical component of a full water master plan is a hydraulic model. And so the technology exists today to digitally model how water flows through our distribution system. And that process creates a computer model that can be used from this point moving forward to evaluate water age, how water travels through the system, and it also is used to forecast how the community grows, and as growth and development happens, how does it change how the water flows. A hydraulic water model is incredibly important to sustaining the long-term ability to provide water. We did not ask for a hydraulic model because we were trying to stay within our budget of $250,000. EHT is proposing within their scope of work the full evaluation and development of a hydraulic water model for our entire distribution system, which is something we weren't anticipating. They're offering to do it and still remaining within the budget that we had provided. And then the final piece, number 3, is master plan development. Based on what our evaluation of raw water supply and transmission is, based on what the hydraulic model shows us, we then develop a series of capital projects moving into the future of where we need to invest in our system, how we need to invest our system, and what those potential costs will be. So at the end of the master plan, we have a pretty good idea of where we're getting our water from, how it's going to move around our distribution system, and what the costs are going to be to sustain this system out into the next 20 to 50 years. And so that's the full scope of work that EHT is proposing, and they have a price of $225,000, which is less than what we had put in our CIP. The last thing I will say, and in the selection process of all the engineers that submitted, again, we had a significant number of highly qualified firms competing for this. Improtech Hibbs and Todd, EHT, is headquartered and officed out of Abilene, Texas, which, full disclosure, I helped run the water department for Abilene for 10 years. I have literally done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects with EHT. That's not an exaggeration. I know these guys. They've done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects for me in a previous distribution system. They are incredibly competent and manage their budgets incredibly well. I have complete and total confidence in EHT's ability to do this work and serve our community with great quality. And so I am asking for approval of a contract in the amount of $225,000 with EHT to perform our water system master plan. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
What's the time frame on this?
They projected 10 months.
Will they do any lake analysis? Because it seems to me that Cooper Lake has been very susceptible to drought in the past.
That's part of the evaluation of the water sources that we're going to use, is what is the risk. If I am, my gut, I don't make decisions based on my gut, but it informs me on the process. I think where we land is probably a primary supply of water from Lake Cooper and maintaining an emergency backup contract with Sabine River for Tawakoni water, so that we have some small minimum quantity of water that keeps us flowing, that we have access to out of Tawakoni, and our primary supply comes out of Cooper, because we already have a treatment plant, and we just spent $800,000 upgrading the pump station at Tawakoni. So there could be some combination of supplies that are used, because if we go 100% to Cooper Lake and it's acceptable to drought, we could run out of water, and we don't want to hurt ourselves in that manner.
So you're saying primary would be Cooper emergency to walk?
There's a potential that that would be the case. There's also a potential that we just stick with Tawakoni water because the cost of switching over to Cooper are much greater. But we've just got to do that evaluation. But they will evaluate the water availability at the lakes and they'll also evaluate the water quality and what it takes to treat that water.
I remember when we, Upper Trinity, we got a check from Upper Trinity. Did that pay, are we still getting money from Upper Trinity, or did that pay everything for the next 100 years? Or
They-
the remaining?
Jamie probably remembers that process, but
For some
basically,
reason, I thought it covered everything.
we got an annual payment from them every year, and we were going to out for the life of this contract. And they basically took the net present value of that future cash flow and cut us
Okay,
one
that's-
check, and we don't get anything else from Upper Trinity.
Used to get a 5% admin fee, and what they did, and it was maybe $5,000, if that, a year. And that was really for our trouble of doing that pass-through bill between, Upper Trinity and City,
Sulphur River.
or Sulphur River. And so when, this was back when Derek was city manager, and they came back and they said, look, instead of doing this 5% admin every single year, we did a cash forward analysis, and it came up, it was like $534,000. Let's do it one time, and that's what we decided on doing.
Wait, but that was an admin, but are we still selling water? And what do,
It's just a pass.
It's just a
Okay.
cost through, so
Okay.
whatever they buy from Cooper, they pay us, and then we pay Sulphur
okay,
River.
okay,
It's a wash.
okay.
Yeah, we pay Sulphur River first, and then we bill Upper Trinity the
Okay.
exact same amount.
Okay.
It's what always throws our,
Yeah.
water budget
Out of whack.
At the beginning of the year.
for the first 6 months.
Okay.
It's so large, but it's just 100%.
So a lot of this work that we're talking about is what we've talked about. Other cities kind of fail to do, and then when all this growth happens, they're not prepared for it. So we are looking to a view to being prepared for the growth. That's a
Correct.
good thing.
Yeah. And so there are communities, some of them in our region, that have put a moratorium on building permits, and they will not issue any new building permits because they can't handle any new construction on their water system because they've maxed out their capacity. And they just had no way of foreseeing that level of growth that fast. And so they're having to scramble to increase their capacity and get more water supplies so they can start growing again. We don't want to be in that situation.
All right, so Sabine River Authority, they said they're willing to start negotiating now.
They would renegotiate and renew today because they jacked their prices up by a factor of 10.
So what's their deadline of when they will stop negotiating?
2027.
2027.
August of
So
2027 is when it expires.
August of 2027?
Yeah.
So if we do this analysis, we're only taking 3 years, so we're taking a year to get it figured out.
Yeah. But then,
And then
if
coming up with the money and figuring out how we're gonna pay for it all.
if we choose to start taking Cooper water, we do not have to build a pipeline from here all the way to Cooper. That pipeline already exists. I believe it's an 84 or an 85-inch diameter pipeline that goes from Lake Cooper all the way to the city of Irving, and it passes within 2 miles of our water treatment plant. So we would just have to build a 2-mile water pipe from the plant to that line, transmission line, and tap into it. But
But then the
that
cost-
line crosses the river, and
Yeah.
we've just found out that it costs $1 million to cross the river.
Yeah.
And that would take time to construct. And so if we know we're going to make that decision, then we've got to design, then we've got to construct that 2 miles. All of that's got to happen before August of 2027.
And the contracts that we're gonna be negotiating for are gonna be extremely long-term, so we're
At
gonna
least
have to
50
make
years.
a lot of these decisions in the next 3 years.
Yes.
The tapping in, is that the River Authority's decision to allow us to do that?
That is going to be a negotiation most likely with the city of Irving because it's their line that goes all the way there. And so the water that Upper Trinity takes goes down the city of Irving's line. North Texas Municipal Water District also gets water down that water line. And so if we take Cooper Water, we'll have to pay Upper Trinity for the water. That's our water that we sold to them. We got to buy back. But then we'll probably have to pay the city of Irving to transport the water because it'll be their pumps that suck it out of the lake and move it down the pipeline. Transmission costs are not substantial, but it's a cost. And then whatever our treatment process is probably going to be more extensive because of the quality of water. We still want to produce quality water for our citizens, so that means we've got to do more work with the raw water coming in.
So if we have, if we're having to, let's just say that we take Cooper and that's gonna be our primary. And then we have the water treatment, it's gonna be at that level to get it clean. So if we're taking the backup for Lake Tawakoni,
We're good.
we're good.
Yes.
How far is it from Cooper to Irving?
A hell of a way.
There's a lot of pipe. And a long, big pipe. We're talking about, what we're talking about, 16 inches? And this one, they're talking, he was 84 or something like that,
Oh, we're talking, the line we're doing at the river crossing is 18 inches.
18.
And that's the best Irving can do.
Oh, they've got water from everywhere. That's not their only water supply. They've got water from everywhere.
Okay, now, I can't, we've talked about so much money today. Now, where are we getting this money from? If we go forward with this?
Included in our capital improvement plan, which is that 3.5 million that we received from our certificate of obligation in June, we included $250,000 within that for this project.
Okay, good deal. That's what I was trying to remember, where it was.
85 miles, give or take? It was not a cheap project. I still maintain the single most expensive thing a city will ever do is water. But it is the currency of cities. You can't live, you can't grow without it.
And we want to have plenty.
For a long time. Any other questions for Mr. Lisenby? If not, can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion that we adopt a resolution awarding the contract completion of the City of Commerce Water Master Plan, EHP.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That concludes our special city council meeting. So do I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move that we adjourn.
Second.
So at 7:08, this meeting is adjourned. No need to vote.
We done?
We're done.